maybe pension penetration is about 2%, thereabout. Now, when you look at a, trader, this trader is essentially one disaster away from losing their entire business, right? And that disaster could be some riot, somebody pours away what she's selling, and that's it. She almost cannot recover. You have instances where it's a child accident, right? A broken leg, and that's it. She has to sell everything she has to cater to that. So I think when you look at the tech community, there is a whole lot of focus on just the payment side of things. There's been some increasing focus on savings now. But I think there needs to be a shift. There needs to be a whole lot more focus on things like insurance and pension as well. Because at the end of the day, those are some of the things that will help these women, as the case may be, to continue to maintain their livelihood and maybe at the end of the day, even increase it, right? Or, make better livelihood for themselves. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand I think it's also similar to some of the things we've been discussing. Digital literacy, it's extremely important. And I think with the level of infrastructure we have in Nigeria today, there's a whole lot of people that are financially excluded that have touch points with the existing technology that can already be financially included. So I think the first part of the work is let's even solve the problem for those people first. And the way to solve the problem for those people is really around education. There's no trust. And Nigeria, by virtue of what we've been through and our history as well, there's a lot of distrust, in the system. You've had stories of, I put my money here. When I need the money, this person has disappeared, right? So how do we continue, or how do we start to build that trust back? And one of the things we can do, in my opinion, to build that trust back is keying back into the community. These are women that, for as far as I can remember, are parents. I've been in different associations. So you're a tailor, for instance, you're a tailor association, and you're contributing every month. We have these alert jaws that go around and all of that. So how can we build technology to enable those existing structures rather than, hyper-focused on how do I just, turn it over its head completely? How do I enable those existing structures? And then how do I then gradually start to make it a lot more efficient, a lot more delightful, and all that? So let's solve the functional part of it yet. And while solving that, let's not focus too much on just payments alone. There are other things around insurance. And to the point, Dr. Mrs. made earlier, which is, how do we also ensure that for some of these, different people we're engaging, we need to meet them where they are currently. So if the service you can enjoy is purely USSD, and I'll take that back a bit to, the part around technology in Nigeria is still quite expensive, right? When you look at the USSD session, for instance, I think for some services, it can go as high as, 3 naira per session. While that may not seem a lot, for some people, 3 naira charges every time I try to do a transaction. What is the incentive? What is the benefit to me if every time I try to do that transaction, you charge me, that amount? So there's also the need to then see, how do we meet these people where they are? Someone that maybe the entire income in a month is 5,000, and then you want to charge them 500 naira in transaction charges. It's a tough sell. So those are some of the things we need to address. I will pass over the mic now to hear from the other panelists.
That one of the interesting things that we usually leave out is that technology already exists that addresses many of these problems. The question, just like what you said, is technology is expensive, but more so is our willingness to actually use the applicable technology for that context at scale that will make it cheaper. So let me give you a typical example. Rural telephony today is something we must have heard about one way or the other, essentially providing telecoms access in a rural context, right? We have a lot of rural telephony licenses and initiatives from different technology providers. But the question is, how incentivized is that section of the market that allows a private sector person to put their money into it? So, just to digress a bit, every time we talk about, substituting a part of our oil payments with government funds, that we call subsidy, I always ask, where should we actually be subsidizing? An aspect of where subsidy should go is in rural telephony, because it then gives you connectivity to places that you would never have expected connectivity to be, and research and already established work shows that everywhere you bring technology, from telecoms to eventually internet, the quality of life of people begins to increase, the opportunity level increases, their access to certain things to innovate also increases. So I give another typical example. Satellite communication is already very established. Satellite communication is even older than GSM communication. Satellite communication today can still be used in that same manner as we use the GSM. So I think the most important thing is how we want to be able to use relevant technology for the different contexts that we have. It will be difficult for a regular, fiber optics cable service provider to take fiber optics into a community where there's probably just 10,000 people that have, like you said, disposable income of probably less than 50,000 or 100,000 monthly. How much, even annually, how much do you want to charge monthly for fiber optics, right? In the center of in the city center, that you want to move fiber optics from the city center to a very, rural context. So, there is that part where we need to look at it. Yes, I do recognize that quite a number of government agencies trying to, do a lot of things within the rural context. But the truth about it is that there should be that shift from a social strategy to a more, private sector-led strategy that gives, based off of an incentive, that allows people to actually go invest in those neighborhoods. Because, quite interestingly, if you remember, the cocoa merchants of the yesteryears, the groundnut merchants of the yesteryears, the real traders that go into the farms, do the massive agricultural programs, or aggregate those agricultural produces and bring them into the, peri-urban centers where, the off-takers then take it off, that becomes very commercial, are actually in the rural enclaves. And they actually have liquid capital. What you mentioned something. Many of them will put their, cash under the bed. I do remember, of cocoa farmers, of cashew nut traders that actually have millions of naira, in their homes, in their warehouses. Not because they want to, but that is how they have to survive. Because they have to trade, get the commodity, and the farmer will only accept cash now. The farmer does not even have a bank account. So, it's actually having to use some of the already available frameworks. I like that you mentioned the Esusu, the Ajo that we already have. And I must mention this. Every time, I don't know whether it's a flaw of our system, every time you see people in tech, and you mentioned it, the disconnect, want to create a solution, they come from the concept of the urban dweller. So there's a psychology around designing that this urban dweller sees. However, the rural woman, the rural man, does not have any of those thinking processes. His own mindset is completely different, right? He already trusts the Esusu man. They know where his house is. They know, his family. He's been working with them from 20 years. How do you enable that process? Unfortunately, we put technology as the driver rather than as the enabler. So we need to change that role of technology being the driver rather as technology being the enabler. Because our social context, we can change as a people, right? But technology can enable us to accommodate quite a number of other things. I just want to end on this point. Now, quite a number of people are already doing it. The same example as we have of M-Pesa in East Africa. We have Lapo and SIP in Nigeria. Lapo and SIP have massive coverages. I first came across Lapo in 2005, 2006, and SIP in 2005, 2006, and they're existing till date. The IFC has directly invested in Lapo, right? And there are quite a number of those organizations. Now, many people in this room may not even know Lapo and SIP because it is literally bottom of the pyramid conversation, right? And they use a lot of the concept of touch points. If I enabled that kind of system, and that was what I thought the microfinance system in Nigeria would be. The founding fathers, the Grameen founding fathers of microfinance focused on touch points at the bottom of the pyramid, but we moved it above the bottom of the pyramid. How do we take it back, right, in fundamental nature that will allow technology to be able to work in that framework? So we incentivize it, allow private sector people to be able to invest in it, then focus really on using enabling technology, not as drivers, but as enablers for the bottom of the pyramid kind of processes. Then it will allow us to be able to unbundle a lot of better opportunities for people to adopt technology and adopt financial inclusion processes and services in those areas.
Thank you. Dr. Saisi? So just to add to what he has said, I think one way to go about this is to think about this as rural development. So the reason why we have a lot of rural-urban migration in the first place is because people are seeking for opportunities. But it doesn't mean that we don't have assets in rural areas. And when you think about rural development, I know there's even a Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. Then we have to scale those investments, and it has to be driven by government creating that enabling environment for private sector to see the need to come in and invest. We have to tie those investments to assets within the rural areas, as opposed to making people look at it as, oh, I'm having to put a mast here or something, infrastructure that would not be tied to anything. Now we are talking about agriculture. Everyone, if you look at, all the, conversations around, youth unemployment in Nigeria, everybody goes back to agriculture. Where is agriculture going to? Where can we scale agricultural investments? It's in rural areas. So can we begin to tie investment in technology, for example, to drive agricultural revolutions within the rural areas? And then the excess technology or the excess capacity coming from technology deployed to improve agricultural investments can now feed, because it's still these same farmers, okay, who have challenges moving their produce to urban areas. All year round, I get fresh vegetables from suppliers in Jos, in Plateau. I live in Abuja. And they're able to, we make the call, the woman in the village, she puts it in the vehicle, sends that to me. Imagine if we scale investments within this. The woman has a simple payment solution on the phone. I pay, she sends a message to the driver, picks it up, moves it. So we can begin to think about connecting rural areas as part of a wider rural development investment strategy that will now solve the problem of improving educational outcomes for children. It's still all the same conversations we're having about improving literacy for children, improving adult literacy, improving digital literacy. So if we look at technology as a big enabler, like you have said, then the investments can be scaled to do a lot more than just putting a mobile phone in the hands of a person. And I think that if we take it that route, then we can do a lot more with enabling financial inclusion for a woman in the rural area, because it's not just financial inclusion for the sake of financial inclusion. It's financial inclusion for the sake of empowering that woman, ensuring that her children are educated, they can become productive citizens, you can improve agricultural outcomes, you can improve even health outcomes, and then we have a better society.
Thank you so much. Before we take, are there any comments from the audience? Comments or questions? Okay, we have 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure we have time to take all of that. But before, I think I just need to say that, well, your final point, Dr. Sesi, is like on point. A lot of people mistake financial inclusion for banking inclusion. And it's so much more than just putting your money in a bank. It relates to how you use your money, how you manage what you spend your money on, how what you are spending your money on improves the quality of life that you have as a person and your family gets to enjoy. So financial inclusion needs to be seen as a holistic package for the individual's development that just happens to be tied to money, because that is the means of exchange for value. And also to what Abiola and Larry had said, I think is also key. We recognize that technology is a solution that should enable infrastructure that you already have to do better, to be more efficient, to serve those who need it the most. We cannot throw out the baby and the bathwater. So we need to use our available technology, the opportunities that we have, the little that we have, basically, to support that which already works. Where in the case of the Esusu collectors, in the case of the community woman or the rural woman that sells and needs to get her money, we need to be able to have our technology that keys into that space, that tiny space, and makes life just a bit better and easier for the woman. So I'll take our comments from the lady at the back. Yeah. 2 minutes, please.
My name is how can you create free ecosystem?
In a what?
Web3 ecosystem.
Oh, Web3 ecosystem. Web3 ecosystem. So do we have time to explore that entire answer, or should we just take the tip of the iceberg?
Okay, so maybe take the tip of the iceberg. Well, Web3 is what the whole world, we're all still exploring it. Yes, are there opportunities for for financial services in Web3? Yes, definitely. But will building financial services in Web3 help financial inclusion? Probably not. And that's simply because the bulk of the people that are financially included, they have not even been able to take advantage of Web 2.0 or maybe even Web 1, right? So taking advantage of Web 3 may be a bit difficult. But yes, are there exciting technologies to be built? Do I see Web 3 revolutionizing financial services? Oh, definitely. In fact, the prediction is the future of financial services is such that the banks as we know it today will disappear, right? Because it's a case of, at the end of the day, what do you need the bank for? To hold your money, to give you a plastic card in the form of the ATM for you to be able to do transactions, right? What I am really interested in as a user is I want to make payment. I'm not necessarily interested in the bank. What I really want to do is I want to make payment. I want to make, do purchases. I want to subscribe to services. So the future of financial services, when you look at it within the context of Web 3.0, is such that, because of advancement in things like, artificial intelligence, advancement in things like blockchain, because at the end of the day, the bank is really meant to provide trust, right? When Mr. A wants to exchange value with Mr. B, the bank is just saying, I can confirm to you that I owe the money, give him the service. When I do a transfer to you and your bank says 2,000 naira has been added to your bank account, 2,000 naira hasn't really moved to your bank account. My money sits where whatever my money sits, right? But it's because of the trust system that the bank is providing that makes your bank confident to say, yes, 2,000 naira has entered your bank. And that makes me say, yes, 2,000 naira has left my bank, and you can give me the service, you need to give me. And these are some of the things that, technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence and all of that we eliminate, and we can then have, peer-to-peer exchanges and all of that. But again, just to reiterate, within the context of financial exclusion, I don't think we're at that point yet where, Web 3.0 can, essentially significantly help with financial exclusion in Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Larry. Unfortunately, we don't have time to take any more questions. Okay, just maybe if you can limit it to 30 seconds, that would require an equally 30 seconds answer. Okay, please, in front.
Thank you. So it's a quick one. You had mentioned, I think it was Lanre, language as a potential barrier, and this goes to any of the panelists. Is there technology that is already being designed to address that? Or are there examples perhaps anywhere else where we're deploying language to to help in terms of financial inclusion?
In fact.
So quickly, so
30
the
seconds.
example of M-Pesa is first traditionally Swahili. It's not even English first. It's first traditionally Swahili. It's if I change my default setting to English that it becomes English. So I would, anytime I'm designing social programs, I would design programs first to have the Pidgin as the original language, then the other traditional language. English is my last, natural language. So most times, I'm sure most people in this room would design with English first, right? But more people speak Pidgin, interestingly, than they speak English because it's easier to communicate in Pidgin. So I think that's the default factor we need to think about in terms of the language order, in terms of designing financial inclusion products. A Yoruba woman will respond to a Yoruba prompt faster than she'll respond to an English prompt. And that's how it works.
And to add to that, and maybe this goes back to our chat, our Web3 conversation. Interestingly, after, Chat GPT-3 was released, I don't know how many of us are familiar with Chat GPT. And I think this goes back to your question on the Web 3.0. So I'm modifying my response, actually. So one of the interesting things that came out of that is some young man in some rural part of India was able to take that technology, build on top of it, and translate all government services to the local languages, such that it doesn't matter whether you understand English. I mean, India has over very fragmented, similar situation to Nigeria, over 40 languages. Translated it to those languages such that the people building the technology or building the services, if you look at Nigeria, almost all the government services, central services, are based off of someone that knows how to read and someone that knows how to write, right? So what ChatGPT or what some of these Web3 technology can help you do is, yes, I can build on top of what already exists. So what they did in India is, based on those advances in artificial intelligence, ChatGPT in this case, they were able to translate those services. ChatGPT converts, or the technology that was built, converses with the user in their local language, converts it to English, converses with the technology in English, and does that, those mediation. And, as a matter of fact, I think that can help. But the context of my original answer is, at the end of the day, for you to still use that service, you need an internet-enabled, application or device. And when you look at a lot of people that are financially excluded, access to even those smartphones is already an issue.
Okay. Thank you so much for keeping the responses very short. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I know we want to take this conversation forward more, but over time, we'll continue the discussion. Let's not stop here. Let's continue talking about it. Let's explore the opportunities that exist and increasing access to technology first, because we need that infrastructure. As I said, the internet's penetration is honestly less than 40 if we are being truthful. And in the remaining 60 is where we have the people that are mostly excluded. So let's try as much as possible to get that 60 into the space of technology, and then it's easier for us to solve most of these technologies, most of this problem that would be easier to solve with technology. So thank you once again to my wonderful panelists. I truly appreciate your time, and thank you to our guests for listening. Do have a wonderful day.